thank you everyone for having such great presentations, lots of deep information about new products and the challenges that we still need to overcome. And I would encourage, as we're going through the questions that we've prepared in advance and have come up with as the presentations have evolved, I'd encourage the audience to continue chatting cues into the GoToMeeting chat. So let's start with one of the elephants in the room. How do we address the issue of consumers' concern that vehicle to grid is going to destroy their battery and is not worth the trouble or risk of being stranded? I'd like to hear foremost from our automotive representative, Eric, on how he's balancing that in the equation of providing grid services. And of course, anyone else who has thoughts, please jump in.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. Of course, that is one of the primary concerns. We've heard a lot of information in the past of batteries degrading when charging a lot. Now, clearly, you have to look at what does that actually mean? Why does a battery cell in the end degrade? It's basically a fact or a matter of the stress that cell is put under. So if you look at what we are doing in our example here, we're using 20 kilowatt power out of a pack that can do essentially 1,000 horsepower. And for the size of the pack, we are basically charging and discharging at about 0.2 C, which is a characteristic rate of charge and discharge. And it's very, very low for the type of cells we are using. So we've done extensive testing on our battery cells for lifetime predictions, for forming our warranty procedures and plans. And we don't see any significant impact of this cycling activity in the 20 kilowatt range. So we can back that up with cell test data. We bring that up to the vehicle level. As long as you've got a big pack, you're pretty safe. Or you can scale down the power if you've got a smaller pack, which means the future vehicles that are going to come that are potentially shorter range, they can address that issue by varying the charging or discharging powers.
Eric, to clarify, is your battery testing in advance of the release able to essentially guarantee through a warranty that with the low C rates that you're going to offer the Lucid Air with a warranted offering for reliable discharging for the life of the vehicle with grid services?
Yes, absolutely. It's the same as with our general warranty for lifetime. We have to account for a high amount of ultra fast charging, which is way more stressful. I mean, we said we go up to 350 kilowatt. That is 3.5 C on a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. That is real stress. So we've done significant development on the charging profiles, the thermal systems, how to charge the batteries safely, reliably, and without a lot of damage. And inherently developed together with our battery supplier a chemistry that is fairly robust against such stress. Now again, the AC, the level 2 charging we're talking about up to 20 kilowatt is a fraction of that level of stress. And typically when you're going to use your vehicle in V2G applications every single day at these low powers, you are not going to have to go to fast charge it every other day again because you've already filled it up at the low power level. So there is not necessarily an overlap of those use cases. So we can warranty the application, and we will have a warranty that is convincing there for our customers.
And chat just came in that you exactly answered, thinking about 20 up to 20 kW V to G power for the home. Any other thoughts about degradation and how, for example, the EVSE providers are thinking about ensuring that they're communicating with the automakers to protect the vehicle's battery lifetime? Joseph or William?
Well, I think the batteries, the vehicle is in ultimate control. The vehicle can shut off the charger when it wants to and when it has to. So it's theoretically, controlled by the auto manufacturer, under that system. So to kind of go back a little bit, I think I have two opinions. One is if you could relate to a low dollar amount how much it costs per whatever cycle you want to do it to the consumer, that might make it a little easier for them to swallow, because they really don't understand, like, how many miles would I lose for my total pack life, over time if I use this in a B2G program, X, Y, or Z. So that's one potential, is to figure out, okay, look, it only costs you 2 cents to do this cycle, and it's worth 17 to you. So, something along those lines to try to get the end consumer happier about that might be better. The other is on the industrial side, and maybe this can apply to the consumer side, is having a specific portion of battery that's not necessarily recognized by the end user that is used for that B2G function. And we got a little bit of an idea of that, saying, okay, the user allows you to have this much energy. But again, if that's kind of invisible to the user, then that might be a little bit more relief as well. Say the utility owned that little piece of that battery system, or somebody else subsidized that little piece of it, and that's kind of shown out of your view as it doesn't affect anything. We use a portion of the battery that is not scheduled for you to use as a vehicle. Something along those lines, I think, might make the end consumer a little bit more comfortable with when they drive somewhere and they plug in and they go, okay, is somebody going to take power from me, and how much, and how long is my battery going to last? And if you can get rid of that kind of worry, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. And I think, Noel, here you also have to count the following. Knowledge is power, right? And the fact that we can actually have the ability to exchange information between the vehicles, the charging, the systems that sits behind the chargers. We can actually envision that in the future, as an example, we may have a situation where charging profiles is something that an automaker would like to share with a manufacturer of, as an example, energy management systems that is sitting behind the charging plaza or charging system. And in that regard, and Eric, correct me if I'm fantasizing about wrong things, that creates additional value, right? Because now not only you enabling the battery of the vehicle to be used for V1X and V2X purposes, but you're also improving the collaboration between the vehicle itself and the charging ecosystem.
Yeah, I'd say that is a little bit along what Joseph just told us. The vehicle is in ultimate control, so we have to protect the asset. We know via the battery management system the state of health, state of charge, every single cell, essentially. How healthy are we? What can we give at which point in time? What's the outside temperature? Our car is a sensor suite on wheels. It's an over-the-air updatable system. It exchanges a lot of data. We, as Lucid, always know the state of health of our fleet, and we can interactively monitor and basically take action if we see things going the wrong direction, or even if they go the right direction, explore a little bit more of capabilities there. So essentially the charge profile comes from the car, and it's not necessarily a given at any given point in time. It may vary by time of day because of temperature and other factors. So
right, but what I'm talking about, imagine the situation where we're trying to predictively, as an example, forecast what energy will be available as a facility or what energy will be needed. If you take the information coming from charging profiles, as you suggested, in real time, that may vary based on the weather conditions, age of the car, whatever. All of a sudden, now it gives us an additional dimension for improving the quality of our optimization and forecasting.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you could take it to a real high level where you track every asset that is about to come to your facility, right? You know when it leaves, you know where it's going from the navigation system. I mean, you could go into the sorts of what sophisticated logistics solutions that are managing just-in-time deliveries can do. If you think about a truck traveling from a supplier to our plant down in Arizona, we know when it leaves the plant, we know how it's making headway, and when it's going to hit our dock. We could do something very similar because we've got the power of data. Absolutely.
Yep.
And I would make that observation. I think fleets is probably a great place to try this out, right? That you have a customer who's willing to understand the complexities, who probably can read the warranty and be more sure. Me as a consumer at home, it's a little more scary, right? Car's a big investment, so I'm definitely going to be looking at my car maker's warranty to say this can't cost me anything. It can't hurt my car. But I think the fleet world is certainly a place that would be great to pilot this and show that it doesn't damage vehicles. I think that's probably as important as anything, is just showing consumers it works.
Yeah, from the Howard perspective side, I mean, and looking into all the current projects that we're involved in developing the technology, and you're spot on, John. Most of what we're looking at is fleets testing these capabilities that will then be rolled out to the general public. Main concern is the warranty, so that's why I do see the benefit of OEMs ensuring or giving the little tap on the shoulder to customers, saying, don't worry, if you subscribe in this program, your warranty is okay, your battery is okay, and in anything, well, it's just a matter of swapping or finding a fix to it. But like you mentioned, Eric and the team, so yeah, it is the vehicle that sets the charging limits, and the charger will deliver what is requested at the standard we can deliver.
That's a great transition into a question around managing the complexity of the controls across everyone, the vehicles in control, and it's helping the actors around it understand how to change in response to the needs of the vehicle and the system. So to that point, there was a question about what types of grid services might be utilized with vehicle to grid. Eric, you were mentioning demand charge management for commercial buildings as a key provider of thousands of dollars per year per vehicle. Joseph, Oleg, and William, you're describing how aggregators could be offering local control of microgrids. And John, you're mentioning that all of the different utilities across the United States, numbering the thousands, all have unique needs. Not everyone's going to be running a 100% clean energy system like in California. So what are the use cases that would be appropriate for the charging and discharging that we've been talking about? Frequency regulation, demand charge management, microgrids, self-absorption, the list goes on.
Yeah, I personally think it's all of the above eventually. Now, how to eat an elephant? That's one of my analogies. How can you eat an elephant? You have to make it into carpaccio, right? You have to slice it really, really thin. Otherwise, you'll never digest it. So number one is putting the technological capabilities into the vehicles, I think, is a big stepping stone to actually being able to tap out of that. It can be in a fleet rollout where you've got a little bit more control, or like us, just roll it into our customer cars, and then start building applications. And we see, of course, the use of the battery in the car at home as one of the great applications. Of course, you can do peak shaving at home. You can do manage charging just to manage your utility rates. On top of that, you can take it to the Upper Peninsula when you go hunting and plug into your cabin there that is off the grid, and then you can still watch the the Giants player, I don't know, right? So there's that charging the house, charging the cabin as an end consumer item. That's very, very fragmented. Then we've got the workplace charging as demonstrated in our demo. We think that's a very valuable stepping stone because the capability, the ability of small to mid-size businesses to invest in that infrastructure and take advantage of their employees' fleets is really, really high. On top of that, the benefit is the cars are parked in front of our employers basically in the time that matters, right? It's the peak times where we're not at home, so we can't actually take advantage of our cars at home at that time. Our employers have our cars stuck on the parking lots for 8 to 12 hours every single day. So I think that's a real great stepping stone, and the financial power of all of those employers is quite high. And the decision is a pure business case. It's really quick to say, what is my energy cost, my power cost, essentially falling under demand charges per year, per month? How can I invest and offset those? And they will very quickly see that there's a compelling business case. And we're just using ours as an example. And we're going to build that infrastructure at our own headquarters to live that optimization. And then the next big one is a little bit a bigger portion of that elephant, rolling that out into the field and really doing good on a grid level.
Speaking of this elephant carpaccio, I would like to add to what Eric said. I think vehicle grid integration is probably the most incorrect term to define what we're discussing here, because it's not always grid. Sometimes you will have applications, as an example, when you have a power failure, when you're powering your home or you're powering your cabin in the woods. But also recently I started looking at vehicle to load, which basically means it's not even a grid of your home. It's a single load. As an example, if you go fishing, you go hunting, as Eric said, right? You can power, as an example, a light, or you can power whatever, sound system that sits outside of your car, you're tailgating at the Giants game. All of those applications are very valid applications. So if we look at how this technology scales from nano level load integration, single iron as an example to iron you showed before the meeting, all the way to grid scale frequency stabilization, I think the number of use cases from what vehicle can enable us by discharging is absolutely limitless. And even if you look at vehicle-to-vehicle transfer, you know, when you have a fleet of last mile delivery or last 100-mile delivery vehicles that can actually help each other by transferring power when they need to just top up a little bit instead of going to expensive power from the charger somewhere on the roadside, I think we haven't even tapped yet into a full range of opportunities that are stemming from V2X platform. And I think what we will find is, once again, the knowledge is power. When we start integrating load profiles, information of asset operation, logistics, all of it together, and really creating platforms that then can connect to either grid of the building, grid of the city, grid of the utility, we will find a lot of very interesting use cases that will be enabled by such platforms. So I think right now we're just at the level where the birth of those platforms takes place.
Yeah,
I would think you would try to do that. Yeah. Go ahead, William.
I mean, I was just going to add to this because most of the sort of say discussions I've been involved around at this point where the technology is maturing and growing is you know, companies are willing to make the investment in the hardware space. So how can I monetize this? So where do I see the money? So for example, a utility company really at the moment they seem to be driving and targeting the fleet because they can ensure they will have a battery storage capability at any time for frequency response, which in turn, if you can confirm you have a given amount of power or a certain time, this in turn on a yearly basis could turn out to be very significant amount of revenues. And but adding to this is outstanding. I'm also I've been looking also at price arbitrage for market participants, energy security in the event of power outages, and even participation in electricity balancing. So The market seems to be going from tapping into the big units and also segmentation into the individual customers, which is, like you said, Oleg, just endless opportunities.
I would just come back to, I think it all needs to be rolled into systems that automate things that, I don't want to have to explain to consumers what frequency reg is or providing capacity. I think consumers are going to just have something that they know works. Here's your compensation. We're doing things for the utility. You want to dig into that, that's fine. But I think the automation systems like Oleg's company has put together, those are critical to this. I just don't think consumers are going to want to know a lot of that stuff in the background. It's just going to have to be something that plugs in and does its thing.
Simplicity is a key.
Guys, any thoughts on how to coordinate all of these different potential limitless to infinite grid services, non-grid services, with the slide that I really appreciated with the thought bubbles and speech bubbles commanding this charger that serves as the interface between the mobile source and the stationary system. Any thoughts?
Yes, I would like to start. Well, that's what motivated us at IATECA to depart on the development of our cloud platform. And what we call IoT on platform is basically an attempt to create something that enables that type of business. If you think about not necessarily control, but orchestration of various loads and various sources, because in a large scale system, you cannot really control, right? As Eric said, the vehicle is an ultimate control of what it can deliver, what it can essentially take as an energy or discharge as energy. So you can orchestrate, you can provide parameters to players and participants in this game. And if you can create a platform that does this orchestration well, based on the knowledge that you derive from vehicles and other sources, and then you can provide a set of flexible interfaces that allows you to integrate with other platforms. Like as an example, we showed how we can integrate with OVGIP platform by taking, as an example, real-time electricity rates and applying them to charging, discharging. All of a sudden, now you have some things that you can scale, because we have to be realistic, right? If you look at the utility market, each utility will have its own unique set of incentives, its own approach to what protocols to use, how to incentivize or disincentivize the user to do it. So if you're trying to build something that can be scalable, you have to be cognizant from the very beginning. Number one, you have to do not control, but orchestration. And number two, you have to provide a flexible cloud platform that can be easily integrated with utility and business specific parameters on the back end.
I think, again, to Oleg's point, and breaking things down into, kind of the priorities, the functions, and how you orchestrate all of those together is kind of that key piece. So we've been doing, energy management platforms for a long time, and for us, this is not that much different. We've, have the capability. Again, you need some level of edge computing capability. So that if there's a connection loss or if there's some other kind of issue there, that you can still operate under a generic rule set so that the units will still do what they inherently are supposed to do, which is usually charge the vehicle. And then when you've got your upper level control layers on, those have to be very intelligent to be able to, again, monitor multiple things and make good decisions about getting to kind of John's point about the lowest cost capabilities for whatever system they live in. So if it's the consumer, is it the lowest cost to the consumer? Or in Lucid's condition, it's kind of a combination of both. It's the lowest cost to the consumer because they don't have to buy electricity, but it also helps reduce the energy that Lucid is spending on the building system. So that's kind of a combination play. And then, all the way up to, where it's just on trucks and buses and municipalities, they get an overall total cost of ownership that drops, dramatically, or cuts the amount of time this equipment pays off. But all of that has to be orchestrated pretty carefully, and it is very difficult. Again, based on the standards requirements, utility interconnect requirements, whatever you're trying to do in the middle in terms of an aggregation to save money or to make money. So that's a very complicated orchestra that you do have to have a fair amount of back-end processing power and intelligence to lead.
I think you're going to have the flexibility as well, because you're not going to find utilities requiring the same things in different locations. You can go east of here, PJM. There's a market. You can sell, capacity and energy. I live in Tennessee. TVA does not buy those services. They provide those internally. So for them, it would be a new structure has to develop. A lot of the big southeastern utilities, they provide all those services in-house right now. So for them, it's a thought about how do they move that to a market basis. That's a big challenge. So I think having vehicles that are flexible, so they can do what what can they do in this location that's useful and has revenue potential. Maybe someplace else you have more layers to that. But I think that flexibility, being able to do different services, is going to be critical to get the scale.
I think that may be an important point too. So flexibility is a blessing, but I guess for utilities it could be a curse, right? Because they need a lot of reliability. They need power and energy available at certain times in certain locations, preferably. So I guess that does need to be managed by the back end with firm contracts and a high availability of a large fleet in the end. That's why it's going to go towards the end of that elephant that will achieve that scale.
Thanks. This discussion is really hitting on the a point that I was observing that might be a difference during your presentations. The contrast of having edge devices as the only parts that can respond intelligently, and the drivers for distributed computing along the different parts of the chain entirely. So I'm wondering if John or Eric, you can talk to how, or Joseph, how the different languages that would be spoken by the utilities across the United States might be harmonized with the fact that automakers like Eric need to be able to interconnect seamlessly, regardless of where they're plugging in, while also avoiding the added costs of multiple implementations in the onboard charger. Can you, Eric, John, or anyone else speak to that tension of how to remain as flexible as possible given the grid service or the location, while achieving the scale needed for the automakers to drive down costs for the equipment?
Right, so the viewpoint I have on this, and we as Lucid, is that we do need one interface that's absolutely clear, and we've bet on ISO 15118 to the EVSEs and all the infrastructure that we want to charge and eventually discharge into. That standard gives us everything we need for charging, discharging safely. All the commands are clear and actionable. Now, for me, the interface then lies between the EVSE and the backend infrastructure, essentially. So I hope I'm going to be fortunate as an OEM to only have to focus on the 15118 implementation. And then the EVSE is basically the translator. It receives the demand or the requests for pushing or pulling power and translates that into ISO 15118 and talks to me whether I can accept or give that power at the given time. So I'm expecting that the interface is going to be in the EVSE, and that's most, it's from our opinion, the better approach, the best approach.
Well, I fully agree with Eric. That's essentially what IATECA saw as an opportunity for us as a business. If you look at the platform that is comprised out of an EVSE that is intelligent, that it can interconnect with other devices, you see it as then an edge controller that can integrate multiple EVSEs with other actors in the space, and then behind it, a cloud that provides you with a powerful optimization engine and some AI capabilities. That's essentially what we need as a glue fabric between, on one hand, having the infrastructure of utilities, and on the other hand, having millions and millions of vehicles running on the road. As Eric said, vehicles need to abide to a single interface. It has to be scalable. It has to be worldwide. Today, we have great coverage between Europe and North America and South America and some Asian countries. So it is a great scalability opportunity. And on the other hand, we have to have the flexibility of implementing effectively interfaces to utility-specific, business-specific, building-specific systems that stems from the cloud edge architecture that gives us the ability to actually implement and deploy that type of interfaces very, very quickly.
So we have implemented, again, the shims for almost all languages that the utilities speak, and some of the issues, which are rightfully so, the utility has very, very strict rules on their communication mechanisms, and so some utilities will provide you with their gateway, with their very, specific protocol that they want to use, and that's it. They're not giving you the option to do anything else if you want to participate in those particular programs. In the future, I believe that, hopefully we'll harmonize a lot more. I know some of the utilities have been working on harmonizing that. And, one will bubble to the top. But in the meantime, basically having a system that has the ability to kind of translate all of those different communication protocols. And it's not too terribly difficult. Again, you only have, a certain set of, kind of requirements or parameters that the utility would be requesting to modify, things they're going to be requesting to change, or however they're presenting, a dollar per watt kind of data to you to participate in. So it really, you've got your time functions, you've got, any of the programs of like volt watt, frequency watt, volt var that they want to specify, and all those type of things. So it does, it's right now, it's very much the Wild West, and everybody has their own kind of way of connecting, which is a real pain. But so basically you just have to make these interface layers that then again communicate into the ecosystem of the vehicle and the charger. And 15118 works, fantastic for, again, the layer to be able to get that type of data back and forth. But, from the outside perspective, it really is going to be interesting to see how things like OCPP are going to be effective, and which utilities, because the utility doesn't want to command a million different vehicles. They can barely run 40 or 50 assets themselves effectively. So they need that aggregation function to work well for them. And so that distributed kind of communication protocols is going to be kind of specific to the size. And as John had mentioned, everybody's interconnection agreement is different. Everybody has different sets of requirements and modeling, and the way they model their grid, and how they ask you to present your model of your charger to them so they can put those pieces in there. So eventually that needs to start kind of coming down to a conglomeration. But for now, you just have to deal with piloting with all of them.
Yep.
I guess if I had the answer to that, that would be king. That's been on the table since I got involved in 2008. I think at that time, a lot of people talked about using smart energy profile, and then OpenADR kind of came into play. And then there's the whole list of traditional ones. Joseph mentioned several of those, the SIM model based things. And the challenge is that some utilities already have programs where they're doing water heaters or other things, and they're going to want to use naturally what they have in place, right? They're going to want to use the language they're familiar with. So that's a challenge. I don't have a good answer for this one. I know it's a debate that's run the entire decade I've been involved in standards. I've just, the whole discussion of could there be one thing utilities could do? The closest I've seen would be OpenADR and then SEP 2, the IEEE 2030.5. Those are probably about as close, but there's certainly people that would advocate other things, 15118 or whatever. So at the end of the day, I'm not going to pick the winner. I think that's part of this industry's trouble and pain, and maybe opportunity is to go out and figure that out.
John, I think the problem here is that we're often mixing apples and oranges. When we say 15.11.8 and 2030.5, I think we're talking about different segments of the architecture, because 15.11.8 is a protocol between the charger and the car, and that is a constant. 2030.5 is an opportunity sometimes to talk to a charger, sometimes to talk to a building energy management system or building aggregator. So it has a place, but it's in a different part of the system. So I don't think it's a picking winner here. Both of them have place. So we identify the place for 15.11.8. 2030.5 is not a competitor, it's a complementary protocol when we're talking about, as an example, charger to something or building energy management system to something else. Or as an example, if we're in Germany, it will be e-bus between the charger and the rest of the home energy management system. Or if it is a cluster of devices aggregated together, it could be open ADR to utility, because that's what they prefer versus 2030.5 today. So I think we need to be prepared for that type of multi-protocol environment. That's what we in communications industry have done for ages, right? Because you cannot force any system to say, okay, tomorrow we're switching to a single protocol. No, that's why we fixed one protocol that allows scalability, which is 15.11.8 for the vehicle to charger. And we need to be open to the fact that, as an example, edge aggregation component may need to speak to BACnet, to eBus, to OpenADR, to 2030.5, to God only knows, right? Take if you're in France, and the list goes on. Because a lot of those systems are installed already, and it's a brownfield opportunity. We have scenarios when we work with customers who go into a facility, and facility has RS-485 based information exchange with an old energy management system that has been there for 20 years. And guess what? They're not planning to change it because it works, right? And it's designed to work another 20 years. So
I do agree. There's different segments where the different protocols apply for sure. I would say that like SAE has 2847 Part 1, and that actually has the smart energy profile embedded in it for utility control. And it's not been something implemented, but it was worked on, a decade ago.
Exactly.
And that's sort of out. So that still needs to be harmonized with 15.118 and kind of get that playing together.
Well, I remember 2030.5 birth. I was a part of the team at HomePlug 15, 20 years ago when SEP2 was born. So, and ever since, we don't see many deployments, but maybe one day, right?
Excellent conversation, and kind of leads into another question if we have the time. There are folks curious about how to ramp these deployments nationally, given that the utilities are often sub-state or even city level programs and operations, yet the automotive sector is designing to continental, if not global market, and the manufacturers are having to deploy their infrastructure in as large of markets as possible. Who are the key players that can help address these ongoing technical, regulatory, and consumer-facing issues? Is it government? Is it industry consortia? Is it someone else? Thoughts from everyone.
I mean, if you put it like this, it really is a combination and a push from all the players. But the main driver at the beginning is probably going to be the one that produces the energy. So maybe from the utility company side, if they have the power now to really reallocate this, and I think this is what SOSA is driving. But from my perspective, from the OEM side, now these OEMs with this incredibly large battery storage capacities have the even stronger possibilities to influence where we're heading on this direction.
Well, I think we need to look.
Go ahead, Oleg.
I was going to suggest that we should probably look at another very large elephant ready for carpaccio in this room. Everyone is talking about restarting the economy in the country, right? We're talking about how to get back to building something in the post-COVID-19 world. I think the development of EV charging infrastructure, especially infrastructure based on principles we just discussed, this massive applications of orchestration technologies and AI to improve the operation of the systems, represent an unprecedented, in my opinion, opportunity for job creation, for growth creation, for creation of actually new business models driving the post-COVID-19 economy. So my invitation to everybody, let's think together, how can we propose a plan that would actually help us to work on those things together. And I know you guys at California Energy Commission have done a tremendous job analyzing what can be done. My suggestion, let's continue doing it together. Maybe we can create some ideas and some plans that actually merit a tremendous investment in this post-COVID-19 world.
I would just observe that, it will be a challenge at the smaller utilities. And I live in a city that actually has a municipal utility, that it's a department in the city, and they're a distributor for TVA. They probably haven't given this any thought, right? They don't have the staffing for that. So you really have to look at the larger utilities that have research budgets, that have teams that are doing transportation electrification, and they have millions of customers. So you talk Southern Company, Duke Energy, Southern California Edison. I can name lots of utilities of very large scale that are looking at this. I think you have to have wins there first, and it's going to be a hard road to get to some of the smaller utilities. That's the way it is. I think the others, like Eric's laid out, their vehicle has capabilities that they would accommodate a utility's needs, but they also would accommodate a local, say, a building's energy needs. So deploying those where you can to gain economic advantage for the local needs of the grid, or the local needs of that host, that gets the technology out there. I think that's the key, is just getting it in enough places, whether it's direct to the utility or if it's just that local host control. I think any of those are putting the technology out there. Those are the enablers. It's great that Eric's jumping in where his vehicle has this up front, but that's not the case on a lot of the vehicles on the road now. That they're not providing that capability. I think they're sort of still waiting for what's the business case, and so we'll just have to see where things move. Maybe it'll take companies like that, Lucid, pushing forward with this. That's what'll make it happen.
John, I think what you just
we see that basically as a typical chicken egg topic, right? So if you don't have assets out there, there is no business case. If you can't show a business case, there will be no assets. So we have a combined goal that is, I feel, really, really enticing, right? The $60 billion Noel mentioned, the $15 billion I heard. On the other hand, the efficient use of all our energy resources, that is a real great final goal. Now, how to get here, I think that's what this discussion exactly is about. It's either it comes top down and everybody has to fall in line and do it the way maybe this panel or this team suggests, but I'm not necessarily a believer in that. I think the Carpaccio, right, the baby steps approach and showing how viable the use actually is, us pushing forward as one of the OEMs, then catching on to customers that see the tangible value, and then the word to mouth will spread. Other OEMs listening in here and seeing, well, actually, sometimes it's good to have the product first, and then the business case comes automatically. With the over-the-air capabilities, we will have an opportunity to tap out on that business case in the future, all of us, including the OEM. So it's from my perspective, it's a baby step approach that's going to bring the stone to start churning. Clearly, if you can go top down in some places, that is enabler too. But the truth is always a hybrid.
But I also
Any last thoughts from Joseph and William before Oleg closes?
If I may jump, no, I would like to make one point. What John pointed out to be a problem, I actually see as an opportunity, because I truly believe, yes, there are many, not only small utilities, but building operators, fleet operators, many stakeholders in this field that don't have the capacity to spend millions and millions on R&D. So there is a solution, infrastructure as a service. This is what we set up to develop with our cloud edge and charging platform, to be able to provide the turnkey solutions that can be deployed and given to somebody. Because at the end of the day, I agree with Eric, all of the business cases will not be known until we actually start deploying them. And you cannot really figure out what will be this battle until you actually engage into it. And we need to be able to provide a platform that allows smaller players to start playing and investigating and actually trying to deploy something to deliver value. It's basically mom and pop operation. If you imagine a parking garage of an apartment building, or you imagine small municipality, it's an opportunity for them. But they need to have tools that they can take into their hands and start playing with. And that, I think, should be the goal for all of us. Let's give them those tools, and we will see that imagination and creativity will flourish.
I think
Last
again,
points from Joseph and William on
yeah,
tools.
The behind the meter seems to be a great way to get kind of in the door on a lot of these opportunities. It has been since energy storage is kind of crept up. A lot of the programs are able to do behind the meter because then you don't necessarily have as much difficulty with the utility to get some of the savings that you want, but it has to economically make sense. And so again, from our perspective, we can provide as much of the tools as we can, and as much of the computing processes as we can to get to understand that yes, this economically makes sense, and there's you're not on the teetering edge of something collapsing if the utility changes a particular program. So if you've got a time of use program and your model works for this and your return on investment's 4 years, and 2 years from now the utility changes something, again, that you have to kind of make sure that your long-term plan still is viable. It doesn't have any of those major risks in there, but in general, deploying behind the meter, as Lucid has shown, can be very, very valuable, and I think that's a great stepping point to get in there. And the utilities, once they recognize that a little bit more and get through more of these pilot programs, because as John knows, they've been doing these for a long time, and trying to get everybody on the same foot is coming around. Again, having the energy storage available, whether it's in a car or in a container, whether it's second use, whatever it is now reaching the price points and the lifetime necessary to meet the goals of what the utilities can use, instead of firing up another peaker plant and burning more coal or oil, which is what we're all trying to avoid.
And just to sort of finalize the comments here, it's like this to me sounds like just a general discussion we have pretty much every day in the development of the hardware, because there's so many challenges around it. I'm hearing from the OEMs, I'm hearing from the utility companies, I'm hearing from the standardization. So putting all this together is basically what really makes it. And then so I encourage all of us here to keep pushing for this to happen, and working together I think is the only way to get it done.
A great way to close to that. We need to keep pushing and find solutions that can let us scale and address our really critical environmental targets, not only in California, but globally. And so with that, I want to thank everyone for an exciting reveal of Lucid's V2G charger, onboard charger, and William's ABB DC wallbox, and Joseph's solutions, and the Iotica Pilot Shark suite of tools, and John's participation on how utilities can leverage these options and technologies to help bring more clean energy and vehicles onto the system throughout the United States. Oleg, I'll turn it over to you to conclude the day.
Thank you, Nolan. Thank you for a fantastic moderation. Thank you for your participation, your contribution, panelists. It was a great discussion. I think we have learned that we're transitioning from effectively being hunted by an enormous shark to making elephant carpaccio, quoting Eric. And I think that's an exciting opportunity. I look forward to all of us enjoying this elephant carpaccio, because I think what we're building together is a phenomenal platform that will enable a tremendous range of business opportunities. And that's what I think was at the core of the creation of combined charging system and ISO 15118, which started, 12 years ago by now? And that was exactly the idea, to provide a scalable platform that enables, on one hand, OEMs to move forward, developing cars and releasing cars with a very clear understanding that this technology is future-proof. And on the other hand, developers of the infrastructure technologies who work on the infrastructures that can be integrated with other services, other players, other stakeholders. So I think the whole point of our webinar here, our 3-day Tuesday events, CharIN Tuesdays, as we call them, was to look at a very large picture, where we are today as an industry, where we're as a society, and how electrified transportation can bring a fundamental change to where our world is moving, to make it greener, to make it more livable, to make it more sustainable. I think we have accomplished that. And we also provide an example of CCS with 15.11.8 as a platform that can help us to achieve that. So with that, I would like to thank everybody for your participation. Eric, Joseph, William, John, Noel, great discussion, great moderation. Thank you very much for your contribution, and I look forward to having more events like that so we can exchange more ideas and brainstorming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for dialing in, and I hope you will enjoy the recording of this conference. It will be available pretty soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye, good afternoon, good evening. Well, great morning to those who just woke up. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.